I'm asked whether...
Sorry? Can you explain
Right. I'm asked whether it seems to me that men have lost consciousness to a greater extent than the ladies, and if that is so, why it so has come about. It's like, have you stopped beating your wife yet, isn't it? No, I don't think men have lost consciousness more than the ladies. I don't think it's quite like that. Consciousness is available in the creation, always, but sometimes it is shadowed and there seems to be less available than at other times. And that's how it is now. It's rather dark. And so human beings who find themselves existing at this present time do become aware of this relative darkness. But it can get much darker, I assure you. Whether the men have forgotten the desire for truth, knowledge, spiritual development more than ladies, I doubt very much. If one really pursues this question, one gets into very deep water about the difference between the genders, which really one requires a separate occasion to deal with. But I would just say this, that ladies, just as part of their natural endowment, tend to be rather more aware of the subtle world and its possibilities than the men, because the men are to go out and deal with the world, the ordinary world. That is part of their function, and a very important part. Whereas the function of the lady does not lie in those spheres, although she likes to try and adopt it. And therefore, the lady does tend to be a little more aware of spiritual issues and of the subtle world. But of course, what she does with her subtle power and subtle knowledge is nobody's business. And one of the shadows cast upon the man in society at the present time is this competitive spirit of the lady. And that's enough to shadow anyone's consciousness. It's a question of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Are the men rushing off into seeking comfort because the ladies are so ghastly, or are the ladies getting into such a mess because there are no gentlemen to look after them and to support them and to encourage them to be ladies rather than pseudo men? It's just the appearance of things at the present time, and it really wouldn't be right or honest or true to make comparisons in such a matter. It is just up to everybody who just heard this sound somewhere in their being that the way of life we ordinarily lead is neither true nor beautiful. And follow that sound until we find the way to something better. Right. Do you think you could stand up? I can't hear you very well. They are what? I don't believe it would be an advantage for anybody, whether it's man or women. I certainly
being a
The lady expressed the opinion that women were not competitive and didn't want to compete with men, that they live in a different way and prefer a different environment. I wouldn't argue with that at all. The nature of the woman is certainly not to compete. She doesn't need competition. This is perhaps the sphere that men can enjoy and can profit from, the spur of competition. I quite agree with you. The environment of the being in feminine form is quite different. And therefore just makes it even sadder that there are these movements from time to time whereby ladies forget this, that they have their own way of life, their own happy medium in which to live, their own sort of occupations, and that they do not have to compete with men. No, I couldn't be in greater agreement with you in terms of the realities of life. Yes, anything else?
Non-traditional. You said something about intellect and whether that is a hindrance or an asset.
I am asked to say something about the intellect in the man and whether in fact it's a hindrance in his spiritual development. Well, it all depends on what you understand by intellect. We are very greatly blessed having access to a rather more detailed teaching about the nature of the mind than is usually available. Now, certainly Socrates lays out these levels of mind in several of the Platonic dialogues. But they don't seem to be easily understood. And the Vedanta also lays them out in a slightly more simple way. And as many of you know, it distinguishes between the lower level of mind, the discursive mind, which is a very surface affair, entirely mechanical, a great computer, and elementary education up to the age of 10 is supposed to enable us to work with this mind. It's obviously no great shakes, just needs a bit of training. Mostly training to shut up when you want a bit of peace. It becomes the recipient of greatest opinions and likes and dislikes and so on. And it's magnificent in its dimension, but it's got one enormous drawback. It really only enjoys what is familiar. It cannot cope with a really new idea. And that is why when we are taught anything at all that seems new, this part of the mind will immediately translate it into a near equivalent so that it's familiar. Now that's the lower mind, but then there is intellect proper, which the Vedanta calls Buddhi, which is quite a different level of intellectual activity. It is in fact a reflector. It reflects consciousness in such a way that it distinguishes between what is true and real and what is untrue and unreal. It has the discriminating faculty within it also, and the capacity to evaluate. Now, the lower mind is not very helpful in this work. It just does interfere, or indeed in any work towards a universal aim. But the operating of the higher mind is absolutely vital to it, because the currency of the higher mind is pure knowledge. It is that part of us which really enjoys the study of the scriptures, for example, and any potent, true ideas, real knowledge. I don't know if you are satisfied with that answer. Good. Just a minute before we have a number 2 from you. Can we? Yes?
What part does wealth or lack of it play in the propagation of the quality of the world?
The question is, what part does wealth or lack of it play in the propagation of the qualities of the gentleman? Yes. Well, I suppose many of us, starting with personal experience, who are sitting here, have started work on this path, knowing that we haven't any wealth and probably haven't got much breeding, not even any education, really. And so we're jolly lucky to have come to an inexpensive sort of university. But wealth is a very interesting aspect. See, in the Gita, which is a very great reference work for wise living in the creation, Krishna says that there are certain categories of people who are very dear to him, and in that list he speaks about the wealthy. Now, Jesus also speaks about the wealthy, and as you know, he says that it is more difficult for a rich man to get through, I can't remember the quotation now, Eye of the Needle, that's right. The eye of the needle is the last interval, as it were, before unity with the self. Now, there's no doubt that what Jesus was referring to was wealth of personality or ego. All those surface things that we pick up as we go through life, and they're quite helpful. They're very necessary at one level, for a time. But they are all surplus to the truth about us. And certainly before one can realize one's true self, all that has to be shed. And that is a sort of wealth. Now you get the impression that when Krishna said put those who are wealthy among the list of those who are dear to him, he had a slightly different nuance. This really is only a personal sort of opinion. But the nuance that suggested itself to me, those who seek wealth and who attain wealth just have a certain quality of really going for that which he or she thinks is good, one of the goods of the world. Now, Socrates would say, yes, but everybody seeks the good. The gambler thinks that cheating at cards is probably a good, all right, so he's going after that particular good, and it's an unexpected good, but to him it's good. But the wealthy have pursued their wealth with some determination, and have maintained it with some determination. And the sense is that these people are launching themselves with a sort of energy into whatever they're going to do. And if just that love of wealth in the physical world can just be converted to love of wealth in the subtle world, love of wealth in the spiritual world, then they will put the same drive, the same optimism, the same recklessness, if you like, into this sort of work. This seems to be the quality of it. But thinking of wealth just as money, riches, anything of that sort, it's neither here nor there. It is true that one doesn't know of any place where this sort of work was carried to a fulfillment where it's affected the whole community, as with the Renaissance, except it be a city, a great centre of people with enough leisure to pursue this sort of thing. After all, Socrates' Athens, there were plenty of people of leisure. That is, they governed and they looked after the community and they raised their families, but they had lots of hours to consider philosophical matters and converse about it. The same in Cosimo de Medici's Florence. He had amassed an enormous fortune. He had mercantile contacts in every port in Europe and the Middle East. And it was those same roads along which the ideas of the Renaissance travelled. So a little wealth is helpful, perhaps even necessary. But it may be the wealth of a big city or a community, and may have nothing to do with the individual. In general terms, when one really gets serious about this work, one disembarrasses oneself of possessions because they become a bit of a nuisance. All those yachts and things you have to maintain. But the wealth of personality and claims on life and all that, that has to go. Don't want that sort of wealth. Good. Anything else? Yeah. Gentleman was astonished that I hadn't actually mentioned art and music in connection with the possibilities of the gentleman, and he asked whether we did not think that in view of the situation at the present time, education in that area would not be very helpful. Yes, the words art and music haven't actually passed my lips. It was suggested that most of the descriptions of the gentleman, however he comes to be a gentleman, assume that he is cultivated, or in the case of the more modern description, civilized. And one takes that to include an appreciation of the arts. And the gentleman's home, which may be large or small, is indeed adorned with examples of real art. This is part of the description. The best education in appreciation of art and music again comes from Plato. In the West we have this very fine tradition. You remember how Plato, both in the Republic and in the Symposium, tells you how to educate the young in appreciation of beauty. It's all laid out, and of course it used to be part of the grammar school education in the days when Plato was still honoured. And it's very simple. He says you first get the youngster to appreciate the beauty of physical bodies. And that was easy, of course, in ancient Greece with all the athletics, accent on bodies in fine peak condition. And then you get him to appreciate that, in fact, there's only one beauty. It's the same beauty behind all those bodies. And then you lift his sights out of the physical world and get him to appreciate beauty of conduct. in different people, fine behavior. And then you show him that it's the same beauty behind all that conduct. It's the same ethic, or the same idea of justice or something of that sort behind it. And so you take him step by step. You next get him to appreciate that there wouldn't be an ethic behind all this beautiful conduct were it not for the great institutions. And you teach him to honour the great institutions of society and appreciate that there's just one beauty behind them all, whether it's the courts of law or the governmental institutions and so on. And finally, almost finally, you get him to appreciate that behind all that lies the beauty of the sciences. And it's all the same beauty, because beyond that the sciences are the true science, the science of beauty absolute. And when he discovers that beyond it all there is a single beauty, a single source of beauty, beauty absolute, which shows itself in the sciences, in conduct, in the arts, in the music and the painting and the sculpture. Well, there he is. He's been educated to the point where he has to make the choice whether he wants that final step to meet the absolute or not. So, yes, education in appreciation of what lies behind the arts, which Plato calls beauty. If that education were available now, outside our own day schools where it is available, that would solve many problems. How are we going for time? Right.
It has been said, although I don't know where from, that behind every great man there is a great woman. Now, in your lecture, the concept of reincarnation was inferred. So could you not say that the manifestation of the gentleman could it not be through the transmigration of attitudes acquired through feminine form in previous incarnations?
Oh. The gentleman says, it is said that behind every man there is a, what sort of a man? Every great man there is a great woman. And he would like this linked with the idea of reincarnation, which he says was inferred from what I said. And that, could it be that the great man had some of his qualities through having experience as a woman in a previous embodiment? The answer is no. I think not. I'm not arguing with the facts that it may be that behind every great man there is a great woman, or not. It's not a great woman. It's a woman of understanding, really, who knows that her role does not take her into the limelight or into great combative issues, such as the great man usually has to tackle. But she is there as a complement to him, not trying to help him, but simply serving him in what he has to do. Now, they say, and I can't at this moment say that I can tell you to say it in experience, but they say that the forgetting about previous embodiments is virtually total, and that when that entity which moves from one body to another takes up a new body in the womb, the forgetting of what went before is total. Now this forgetting can be lifted, and we know of some people, some men and women, who have spoken of their of previous embodiments, but they are men of the order of Pythagoras or Socrates, Jesus. It's not just anybody for whom this veil is lifted. So in a sense there is no what you might call conscious recalling of anything one might have learned from the previous existence. It isn't like that. On the other hand, this sound that we spoke about, that we build up, each for himself, does seem to have been partly built up largely built up by past experience, what has been desired, what has been rejected, so on and so forth. But until we are taught to a great deal about this situation, it's a vague sound. It has no specific information for us, no specific influence on how we act, how we proceed. It does influence, obviously, because it's there sounding all the time. But it's a sort of ignorant, an influence of which we are ignorant until we are shown otherwise. Therefore, I do not think what you suggest is possible, except in these very vague terms. Let me try and be more clear about it. There's a lot of uncertainty in some people these days about gender. A lot of men aren't sure what makes a man, and a lot of ladies aren't sure what makes a lady, and whether there is a difference between them. And this uncertainty can, as we all know, reach into quite deep levels. It certainly can affect sex life. It can certainly affect one's own picture of oneself. Whether a man wants to find his feminine qualities and his emotional power and all these things, or whether he's looking for his more masculine qualities. Now, a man to whom all this argumentation is important may move into his next embodiment, and that doubt may remain with him. It won't determine whether he's going to be a male or a female. That is a slightly different matter. But it could make him even more doubting and drive him even further into the effeminate rather than the masculine. It works like that. It's a quiet sort of pressure of direction. Does that make sense?
It's a subtle note.
It's a very subtle thing. It is indeed. Right, I think if there's one more question, it's probably time to... The lady. Oh, yes. The role of the man playing the part of the husband. The shortest description I know says that his role is to love, cherish, and delight in his wife. There are other things come into play if he's also the father of her children, and then other things come in, like protection and so on. But basically, to love, to cherish, and delight in. And if you examine those three concepts, you'll find it covers practically every aspect of life. For example, to love someone is to want the best for them, not according to some theory, but from moment to moment, just what is needed. Now, the ladies who have this very strong emotional power sometimes get driven by it when it's working negatively into terrible states of depression, gloom, pessimism, or on the other hand, excitement, agitation. And because of the emotional power, it's very difficult, as the ladies know, or most of us know in experience, for this to be stopped. It goes on and on and on. And what in that situation the lady longs for is just somebody to cut it. Now, that would be an expression of a husband's love. If he didn't go off and play golf when she was getting into another state, or whatever he does, retreat behind the times, or whatever, he would risk a little bit of drama by stop, just stop. The lady's very grateful, very grateful. I mean, another lady can do it for you. It's just that when emotional power is running, it has to be something from outside. And that simply would be an expression of love. It's not an airy-fairy, lovey-dovey business. It's being sufficiently awake to the lady's needs and interests to fulfill them. But like all relationships, which we have been told carry the quality of surrender, whatever they are, teacher, pupil, husband, wife, and so on, parent, child, like all relationships, they do depend on this surrender of one's own private views on both sides. And then when there is a need for the man or for the woman, the other can step in and meet it. This is the essence of a relationship, just surrendering the private ownership of the mind and heart. We seem to be back at Father's Day almost, so perhaps we should